I was mid-cast, knee-deep in the lake I've fished since I was a kid, when some dude in a neon HOA vest pulled up in a kayak and told me I needed to pay $900 to keep fishing in my own backyard. Then he pointed at a sign they'd zip-tied to my dock. Private lake. HOA members only. I grew up with mud between my toes and fish guts on my hands. My old man taught me how to tie a line and gut a base before I could even spell Homeowners Association. The lake, Briar Lake, wasn't some luxury. It was just there, like trees or sky. Always had been, always would be. Back when the shoreline was nothing but overgrown brush and a couple of half-sunk canoes, me and my brother would bike down here after school, skipping homework and pissing off our mom. She used to say, "That lake's gonna raise you faster than I will," and honestly, she wasn't wrong. Years later, when I had the chance to buy a few acres right off the western curve of the lake, I didn't hesitate. The house was a mess, saggy roof, busted porch, but the land was gold. My land. My little slice of Tennessee. It backed right up to the water. Technically, my property line runs into the lake by about 20 feet. I've got the survey papers in a drawer somewhere under a pile of fishing lures and boat registration stickers. Point is, I didn't buy the place for the curb appeal. I bought it for the peace, for the mornings on the water, for the quiet, and for the hell of not having neighbors close enough to smell what I'm grilling. Thing is, I'm not part of the HOA. I never was. My lot's older, subdivided before Briar Lake Estates ever even existed. So while all the new houses popped up on the east side of the lake with their vinyl siding and security cameras, I stayed over on the western bend, where the grass grows wild and nobody tells you how to mow it. For a long time, we coexisted fine. I'd wave when their paddleboard moms floated by. They'd wave back. Sometimes their kids would fish off the community dock, and I'd hand them a Coke from my cooler. No drama, no nonsense. Hell, one of the HOA guys even hired me once to fix his busted dock steps. Paid in cash and offered me a beer. That was back when people still acted like neighbors and not mall cops with bylaws. Then the shift started. Little things, new rules, new signs. HOA newsletters printed like military memos. I'd hear rumors about lake access, boat registrations, preserving the environment. I'd shrug and go back to casting. I wasn't part of their little club, didn't pay dues, didn't vote, didn't give a damn. But you know how it goes. Give someone a clipboard and a little power, and suddenly they think they own the zip code. That morning when I got approached by the kayak patrol, I knew this wasn't just some mix-up or neighborly concern. This was something else, something bigger. It wasn't about the lake. It wasn't even about fishing. It was about control, about somebody deciding I didn't fit the brochure image they were trying to sell on Zillow. I didn't buy this place to play by anyone's rules but mine, and definitely not Sandra Meeks, with her ironed polos and fake smile tyranny, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Back then, I still thought this was a misunderstanding. Still thought I could talk my way out of it. I had no idea they were about to come for everything, my boat, my land, and the one place in the world that ever felt like home. The first real crack started with a sign. I came back from a supply run one afternoon, nothing major, just picking up a replacement battery for the trolling motor and grabbing Moose a new chew toy, and I saw it, staked right into the edge of my shoreline like it had grown there overnight. White plastic. HO. A blue lettering. Private lake. No fishing or boating without HOA permit. I stood there for a second, just blinking at it, like maybe it was a prank, like maybe some teenager had gotten hold of one of those fake, no-pooping yard signs and decided to mess with the old guy across the cove. But no, this thing was legit, laminated, weather-sealed, zip-tied to a pressure-treated stake, driven a good 2 feet into my dirt. I yanked it out without thinking and tossed it into the bed of my truck. I didn't call anyone. I figured, hey, someone got a little overzealous, some clipboard cowboy on a power trip. Happens, I'll give it a day. If it happens again, then maybe I'll make a call. Well, it happened again. Not the next day, but close. This time, there were 2 signs. One where I'd pulled the first one, and another on the opposite side of my dock. Same language, same zip ties, same smug little HOA logo in the corner like a dog lifting its leg on my property. That's when I started feeling that itch, deep in the chest, like something personal just got touched. I've always had a long fuse. Firefighting beat that into me. You don't blow up when a building's coming down around you. You breathe, assess, act. But this wasn't a burning roof. This was someone jabbing at my front yard like it was up for grabs. I took pictures, called the HOA office just to get ahead of it, left a polite voicemail explaining I wasn't part of their community and to kindly keep their signage off my property. Figured that'd be the end of it. A misunderstanding, like I told myself before. 2 days later, I found a woman I'd never seen before standing on my dock, clipboard in hand, taking pictures of my John boat like she was cataloging a crime scene. I was calm, asked her name. She said Sandra Meeks, said she was the president of the Lake Briar HOA and acting on behalf of the board. I told her plainly, as level as I could, that she was standing on private property. Mine. That I wasn't a member of her HOA and had no legal obligation to comply with anything they passed. And I swear to you, she smiled, this slow, condescending little smirk like I just told her the earth was flat. She goes, "Well, Mr. Granger, that's something we'll have to sort out. This lake is a shared resource, and we take our stewardship responsibilities very seriously." Stewardship. That word landed like a slap, because here I was, standing on the same shoreline I'd helped clear with my own hands, on the land I paid taxes for, with the lake I'd been fishing since before half their vinyl-clad houses even existed, and now I was being told I needed permission to cast a damn line. I didn't yell, didn't curse. I asked her to leave, politely. Moose growled low, more out of habit than menace, and that finally nudged her off my dock. She jotted something down before walking off like she owned the path she came in on. That's when I knew. This wasn't a one-off. This wasn't about fish or kayaks or permits. This was the first move in something bigger. A feeling settled in my gut, heavy and cold. They weren't going to stop at signs. A week after Sandra stepped off my dock with that smug little smirk, I got a letter in the mail. Real official-looking thing. Thick envelope, HOA letterhead up top, all caps in the subject line. Notice of unauthorized use of community waterway. Community waterway. My blood pressure started climbing before I even finished the first paragraph. According to them, I was in willful violation of HOA Rule 4B, Section 12, which, again, I don't belong to. The letter accused me of operating a vessel on HOA-regulated waters without valid licensing, and refusing to comply with safety and insurance requirements. The last line hit like a punch. They were threatening legal action if I didn't pay a $900 licensing fee within 30 days, and cease all use of the lake until compliance was verified. Now you'd think someone with common sense would look at a situation like this and go, wait, this guy's not a member. He owns his shoreline. This doesn't apply. But that's not how people like Sandra operate. They don't back off when they're wrong. They double down and polish the boots they plan to use to step on your throat. I went straight to her office, or rather the little shared community building they use as their HQ, thinking we could talk it out like adults. Maybe she'd realized she was overstepping and dropped the whole thing. But the moment I walked in, it felt like stepping into a courtroom, not a neighborhood clubhouse. Sandra was waiting, of course. She'd brought her little council of clipboard-wielding minions, 2 guys in polos who looked like they'd never set foot on a boat in their lives, and some woman who kept adjusting her glasses and avoiding eye contact. They didn't offer a chair. They didn't ask how my day was. They just handed me a printed packet with license requirements for non-HOA residents across the top. She acted like she was doing me a favor, said they were willing to include me in the community plan at a reduced fee if I acted quickly. That line stuck with me, acted quickly, like they were offering me a used car and I'd better sign the papers before they changed the deal. I told her again, calmly, that I'm not a part of their HOA, that my land predates their development, that I have every right to access the water from my property. I even brought a copy of my deed. She glanced at it like I'd handed her a menu in a language she didn't feel like learning and slid it back across the table. That night, I found my dock wrapped in yellow caution tape. I'm not kidding, like a damn crime scene. There was even a laminated notice duct taped to one of the posts saying my dock was under review for safety compliance. The dock I built myself, with treated lumber and galvanized bolts, the one that stood through 3 spring floods. Suddenly, it was a safety hazard. I took the tape down, tore the sign into strips. Moose just watched me, tail low, like even he knew something was wrong. A few days later, I noticed a drone hovering over my property, just sitting there in the air, buzzing like a mosquito with a badge. I figured maybe it was some kid playing around. But the next morning, I found another envelope wedged into my gate, this one full of evidence, printed screenshots of me fishing, boating, even standing on my dock with a beer in hand. Each photo time-stamped, each one labeled violation. They were surveilling me for fishing in water that touches my land. It didn't stop there. The HOA started holding community safety meetings that just so happened to center around unauthorized lake usage. I wasn't invited, of course, but I heard through the grapevine they were telling residents I was operating an unlicensed business, that I rented out boats, I didn't, and that I'd been verbally aggressive toward HOA members. One of them even suggested my dog was dangerous. Moose, who'd probably lick an intruder before he'd bite. The real kicker? My mailbox got knocked off its post one night. Smashed clean in two, lying in the ditch like a roadkill raccoon. Coincidence? Maybe, but I didn't see any other busted mailboxes on the street. I replaced it with a stronger post and a metal box. Next week, someone shoved wet newspaper in it until it jammed shut. It was like war by 1,000 paper cuts. Every day, something new. Some new way they tried to push me off my own property, isolate me, wear me down. And the worst part? None of it was dramatic enough to get real attention. It was just enough to drive me insane. And through it all, Sandra kept smiling her smug HOA smile, talking about community harmony while she sent legal threats and neighborhood gossip to burn down my peace, one rumor at a time. I still thought I could handle it. Still thought if I kept calm, stayed level, didn't take the bait, it would blow over. But I didn't know then how far they were willing to go. Not yet. At first, I still believed reason would win. I didn't grow up looking for fights. I wasn't some cranky old-timer waving a shotgun on the porch screaming about my rights. I was just a guy who wanted to fish off his own damn dock without having a drone record how many casts I made. So I tried to go about things the right way. Civil, respectful, paper trail, and all. I started by calling the county clerk's office, figured I'd get some clarity on water rights, who owned what, who had jurisdiction over the lake. The woman on the line was nice enough, but she had the tone of someone who'd been through this kind of thing before. I could almost hear the eye roll when I said HOA. She told me in a voice like warm oatmeal that because the lake wasn't fully public or fully private, shared usage agreements could be complicated. When I asked if they could stop the HOA from enforcing rules on me, she said, not directly. When I asked who could, she gave me the number for the Environmental Zoning Department, which turned out to be a voicemail tree with 6 options and 0 people. After about 4 days of bureaucratic hot potato, I gave up on the county and figured I'd try something even simpler. I went door to door. Yeah, me. Walking into HOA territory like Moses through the desert, just trying to talk to people. I started with the neighbor 2 lots over, Janine something, the one with the hanging ferns and the porch swing. I explained everything calmly, how my land wasn't part of the HOA, how the lake used to be shared without all this red tape, how I was just trying to enjoy the same water I'd fished since high school. She smiled, nodded, seemed to get it. Then she said, but Sandra said you were trespassing, like it was the final word, like Sandra was the goddamn sheriff of water. One of the younger couples actually listened, Casey and Dan, I think. They were polite, told me they'd heard both sides and thought it was kind of crazy I needed a license just to fish. But they also said they didn't want to get in the middle, which is suburban code for good luck, you're on your own. Even the ones who didn't believe Sandra still feared her. That's what got me. People acted like siding with me might get their grass remeasured or their mailbox cited for being the wrong shade of taupe. So I tried a lawyer. Not a high-end guy, just a local generalist I found through a buddy at the Bureau VFW. He looked over my deed, scratched his head, and said what I'd been screaming into the void for weeks. Yeah, they can't do this. You're not under their authority. But then he hit me with the follow-up I'd come to expect. That being said, defending this could get expensive. HOAs play dirty. They'll file complaints, drag it out, bleed you on technicalities. I asked how expensive. He said, if it goes to court, could hit 20 grand easy. 20 grand to defend my right to fish on water that laps against my own backyard. So I didn't hire him. I couldn't. I didn't have 20 grand sitting in a jar marked legal fees. My retirement check barely covered the property tax, and the rest went into fixing the truck, Emily's college, and Moose's ever-growing vet bills. Still, I wasn't ready to swing back. Not yet. I thought maybe if I gave them what they wanted, just a little, it'd diffuse the whole thing. So I wrote a letter. Not an angry one. Not a rant. Just a plain, typed statement addressed to the HOA board, explaining my property's status, confirming my non-membership, and politely requesting they cease any further enforcement actions on my land. I even attached my deed and survey map, with my shoreline clearly marked. I hand-delivered it to their office, walked in, dropped it off, smiled at the receptionist, and walked out, feeling for the first time in weeks like maybe that was the adult move. Maybe that was the turning point. They responded 3 days later. Not with a meeting, not with an apology, not even a phone call. They posted a community bulletin with my name in it. Said I was engaging in unauthorized activity that endangers the ecological health of Briar Lake. They used the phrase, non-compliant individual. Neighbors stopped waving. Kids who used to fish off my dock now crossed to the other side of the street when I walked moose. Someone dumped a bag of dog crap in my canoe. And you want to hear the cherry on top? I got a final warning letter, not a second warning, not a follow-up, a final one. demanding the immediate payment of the $900 lake use fee, or they would initiate enforcement proceedings to recover the debt through property lien. I laughed when I read it, actually laughed, out loud, standing on my porch in my flannel and boots holding a piece of paper that basically said, "Pay us or we'll take your home." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about me fishing, this was about pushing me out. And they weren't going to stop unless I made them. I was about one bad night's sleep away from putting a "for sale" sign in the yard. Not because I was scared, hell no, but because I was tired, worn the hell out. This fight was bleeding into everything. I wasn't sleeping right. I'd catch myself pacing around the house, rereading letters, talking to Moose like he was a lawyer. Emily called and asked if I was okay, and I lied, told her everything was fine, just HOA stuff. But she heard it, that slight crack in my voice, she always does. So she came down that weekend. Didn't ask, just showed up. Said she wanted to clear her head from finals, but I know my kid. She was worried. And when she saw the HOA signs planted along my shoreline again, 4 of them now, she turned into this quiet storm, sat at my kitchen table flipping through the paperwork I'd piled up in a shoebox, muttering under her breath like she was assembling a court case in her head. Emily's studying environmental science at UT, smart as hell, always has been. She's not loud like me, doesn't throw punches, she dissects, and when she hits, it's surgical. She's digging through this stack of HOA junk, letters, photos, that stupid non-compliant individual bulletin, and she suddenly freezes, holds up one of the HOA's lake use flyers. I remember it clear as day. Cheap ink, corny font, a stock photo of a family in life vests smiling on a paddle boat, and down in the fine print, Briar Lake is a regulated water resource managed by Lake Briar Community Association, Inc. She squints, grabs her laptop, starts Googling. I'm watching her, sipping lukewarm coffee, trying not to hope. I'd seen this scene play out too many times in my own head. Hope, disappointment, rinse, repeat. She clicks a few things, types fast, then just goes, "Dad, they're lying." I lean over. She points to a state database. Apparently, any entity that claims regulatory oversight over a body of water, even a partially private lake, has to be registered with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. And guess what? HOA Lake Briar. Community Association Incorporated isn't listed, not for regulatory status, not for environmental stewardship, not even for special district designation. In plain English, they have no legal authority over the lake. None. Not for licensing, not for restrictions, not for enforcement. They can regulate their docks, sure, their private common areas. But the lake itself, especially the portion that touches non-member property, that's governed by state-level water use guidelines, not HOA fantasies. It gets better. Emily keeps digging, girls on a mission now, and finds their financial reports. HOA bylaws require public disclosure for annual meetings. And in the budget? A line item? Lake Use License Program revenue, projected $18,000. They were charging people, both members and non-members, for licenses to use a lake they didn't even have legal authority to regulate. Not just me, everyone, and pocketing it. At that point I was standing. I didn't even remember getting up. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from that jolt you get when the fog clears and you realize you've been gaslit so long you started to believe maybe you were wrong. I looked at Emily and she was already opening a new tab. Said, "Dad, we're reporting this, like today." It was like somebody flipped the power back on in my spine. All the weight, the helplessness, the daily hits, they didn't go away, but they shifted. They got lighter. Because now we had something real. Not just stubborn pride or bruised dignity, we had a damn fuse cord running straight to the HOA's whole operation. That night, I sat on the edge of the dock with Moose curled up next to me and Emily still typing away inside. The lake was calm, one of those glassy evenings where the sky folds into the water like origami. And I remember thinking, they wanted a quiet old man who'd roll over and disappear. Instead, they just gave a reason to fight to someone with nothing left to lose. And a daughter who knows how to burn down a lie with a Wi-Fi signal. Everything changed that day, and they had no idea what was coming. You ever notice how once you stop feeling helpless, your brain starts working again? That's what it felt like coming up from underwater. For weeks, all I'd been doing was reacting, ripping up signs, replacing mailboxes, answering threats, patching holes in my peace of mind. But now that Emily had dropped that bomb, something in me clicked over. I wasn't just defending myself anymore, I was coming for them. We didn't jump straight into it. That's important. I didn't want revenge. I wanted it to stick. If I went off half-cocked, I'd be the angry old man yelling about property rights on a porch nobody cared about. But if we built it right, documented everything, nailed them on their own words, their own bylaws, their own budget, we could hit them in a way they'd never see coming, from inside their own house. Emily helped lay the foundation. She was all spreadsheets and tabs, color-coded highlights, links to government code sections I could barely pronounce. She found the form to file a complaint with the state attorney general's office. It wasn't flashy, just a dry, multi-page PDF that asked for documentation and a written summary of the violations. But once we started filling it out, it felt like loading a weapon. I wrote the summary myself, sat at the kitchen table in my flannel and slippers, stared at a blank Word doc and just let it pour out. I kept it clean, no profanity, but I told the truth. How Sandra and the HOA started regulating lake use they had no legal authority over. How they manufactured fake licensing rules and collected money for them. How they targeted a non-member with surveillance, harassment, and threats. And how I had the deeds, the laws, and the records to prove it. Meanwhile, Emily dug deeper into the HOA's finances. She found meeting minutes where Sandra and the board voted to expand the lake use program, and noted it would cover ongoing landscaping and community events. In other words, they were charging for water access to fun taco trucks and inflatable bounce houses. And here's the part that made me want to throw my chair through the wall. She found emails, publicly available ones. A neighbor named Kevin, who had joined the HOA a couple years back, quietly reached out after Emily's post made the rounds on a small local Facebook group. Said he'd seen our post and had some things we might be interested in. Turned out Kevin was a soft-spoken guy, retired civil engineer, probably not the type to get involved in drama, but he didn't like Sandra, said she'd steamrolled the board too many times. He had kept a backup folder, emails from internal HOA discussions, because in his words, she deleted a lot of stuff before meetings. What he gave us was gold. There was an email from Sandra to the treasurer, discussing how they could incentivize non-members to participate in lake maintenance by charging modest lake use fees. Another one, less careful, flat out said, Tom Granger is a liability. If we don't rein him in, others will think they can ignore the rules too. The cherry on top? A scanned copy of a check from a non-member resident made out to the HOA for the license fee, with verbal agreement only, no contract, scribbled on the memo line, meaning someone paid out of fear or confusion, not obligation. We had everything. Deeds, state codes, email threads, fake invoices, a witness. Now we just needed to deliver it all in the right order, with the right eyes on it. Emily reached out to a friend of hers from school, someone working a summer internship at a state office in Nashville. Not high level, but connected enough to know the ropes. He pointed us to a specific division within the Attorney General's office that investigates HOA overreach and consumer fraud. Apparently, they'd had a few cases recently. One HOA was caught using dues to remodel the president's kitchen. So we filed the complaint. Full package, formal, documented, clean. Then, because Emily is smarter than I'll ever be, we didn't stop there. She drafted a second version, more casual, more human. She posted it, with my permission, in local Facebook groups, neighborhood watch forums, and on a few community message boards. She didn't name names, just told the story. A man, a dock, a lake, and the quiet erosion of rights happening right under everyone's nose. The reaction was bigger than I expected. People started commenting, "Same thing happened to my cousin. Our HOA's doing the same. Wait, they don't even own the lake?" It spread faster than fire in a dry barn. Even the local newspaper reached out, wanted to learn more. I wasn't interested in fame. I didn't want a spotlight. I just wanted them to stop pushing me. But now? Now I had something better than silence. I had a plan. And for the first time in a long while, I could feel it, like the boat shifting under you when the wind changes direction. The current was starting to turn. The first sign that the plan had teeth came in the form of silence. Not quiet like peaceful morning lake silence. I mean that weird kind of quiet, like the air right before a thunderstorm rolls in. The HOA stopped sending letters. No more flyers in the mailbox, no more patrols floating by snapping pictures from their kayaks. It was eerie, honestly, almost like they were holding their breath. That's how I knew they'd gotten the complaint. I didn't expect fireworks overnight. Government wheels turned slow, and I wasn't naive, but they must have felt something shift because Sandra blinked first. A letter arrived, this one more polished, like it had passed through a lawyer or two before hitting my address. It was carefully worded to sound friendly, but I could smell the panic under the perfume. It said they'd reevaluated their licensing protocols and were pausing all fee enforcement while clarifying legal jurisdiction. Translation? They knew they'd stepped in it, and now they were trying to backpedal without admitting fault. but I wasn't interested in pauses or polite lies. I wanted the record corrected. I wanted the abuse of authority dragged into the sun. So I kept going. Emily updated our complaint with the state office, added the scanned HOA letters that now directly contradicted what they were putting in writing just weeks before. Kevin added a sworn statement. And when I say sworn, I mean we drove into town and had it notarized in a UPS store next to a Subway. It doesn't get more American than that. The pressure built slow but steady. And then, of course, they panicked. Out of nowhere, Sandra called me. Called me. First time ever. Her voice was sugar-dipped nails, tight, brittle, and pretending to be warm. She opened with a laugh that didn't reach her throat and said, "Tom, I just wanted to clear up a few things so we can all move forward." I let her talk. She danced around the issue like it was on fire, said there'd been some confusion, that certain HOA policies may have been misinterpreted, and that we all just want what's best for the lake. I told her plainly, no anger, no heat, that I didn't want to chat. I wanted accountability, and I wasn't the only one anymore. She tried to flip it, said I was stirring up trouble online, that I'd created division in a peaceful neighborhood. I laughed right into the phone and said, "Lady, I was peaceful as hell till you zip-tied signs to my dock and tried to bill me for fishing." She hung up not long after. That's when things got nasty. 2 nights later, someone broke a piece of railing off my dock. And not much, just one post snapped and tossed in the water. But it wasn't the wind, and it wasn't a raccoon. It was a message. I called the sheriff, didn't expect much, but figured if they kept pushing, I wanted a paper trail. Deputy came out, took photos, filed a report, shook his head, and said, "HOA again, huh?" That told me everything. Then the trolling started. I started getting weird emails through my business website, strange fake inquiries about lake tours or waterfront rentals. I don't rent anything, never have. Some claimed I was running an unlicensed outfitter business. A couple sent photos of me standing by the dock, copied from my own Facebook. It was all designed to get under my skin, to rattle me, but they were too late for that. Emily saw it for what it was, a last-ditch play. She was relentless. She helped draft a formal press release for the local paper, and this time I let them use my name. Full name, full story, no masks, no anonymous source familiar with the matter. They printed it in Sunday's edition. Front page of the local section, "Retired Firefighter Battles HOA over Lake Access Rights." There was a photo of me and Moose on the dock. Emily had taken it a couple days earlier. Sunrise behind us, fishing pole in hand, dog at my feet. You couldn't script it better if you tried. The floodgates opened after that. Other people, some from my town, others from 2 counties over, started sharing their own HOA horror stories. One guy said his HOA fined him for drying a towel on his own back fence. A woman said they made her remove a swing set because it wasn't architecturally harmonious. But more importantly, a few neighbors in Lake Briar quietly reached out, said they'd paid that same $900 fee, even though they didn't really understand what it was for. One couple thought it was mandatory because Sandra told them so at the welcome meeting. Another guy said he'd paid twice because the HOA claimed his guest kayak needed a separate sticker. They all asked the same thing. "Do we have any chance of getting that money back?" And I told them, I don't know, but we damn sure have a shot now. Meanwhile, the state was moving. Slowly but steadily. Emily got a call back from a real investigator, not a voicemail robot. They asked for more documentation. We sent it all. Emails, photos, copies of checks, HOA flyers, even Sandra's newsletter quotes, everything. You could feel the walls starting to lean. Sandra tried to hold them up with one last HOA meeting, closed door, invite only, but people showed up anyway. They stood in the parking lot and demanded answers. Some held copies of the article, others held printouts of the legal codes Emily had posted online. It wasn't a riot, but it wasn't a tea party either. The board adjourned early. Sandra didn't speak. She slipped out the back like a raccoon in heels. That night, I sat on the porch with a beer and Moose's head in my lap. I didn't feel triumphant, not yet, but I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Control. Not over the lake, not even over the HOA, but over my own damn life again. They wanted a fight. Now they had one. And for once, I wasn't just holding the line. I was pushing forward. The first real crack came with a knock on the door. I opened it and found a woman standing there in jeans and a press badge clipped to her shirt, holding a notepad and a voice recorder. Local news, Channel 7. She said, "Mr. Granger, I was hoping we could talk about the lake." I almost laughed. Hell, after weeks of fighting ghosts behind HOA mailers and playing defense against made-up rules, the idea of someone actually asking me to speak out loud felt surreal. We talked on the porch. She let me tell the whole story in my own words. didn't interrupt once. Moose sat next to me like the loyal press secretary he is, panting through the whole interview like it was all old news to him. Emily came out halfway through and handed the reporter a USB drive, our greatest hits, scans, emails, minutes, maps, receipts, all color-coded and time-stamped. The piece aired 2 nights later during the 6 o'clock news. It wasn't dramatic, no swelling music or undercover sting. Just facts. Footage of the lake, my dock, a few snippets of me talking, my voice slow and steady while I explained how my land touched the lake, how I wasn't in the HOA, how they were demanding money anyway. Then it cut to Emily explaining the environmental code violations and the fake license fees. They even showed a copy of that one email from Sandra about me being a liability. I didn't expect what came next. Calls, messages, people dropping by. Some neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years came to shake my hand, like I'd done something heroic. I kept saying I wasn't trying to start a revolution. I just wanted to fish without asking for permission on land I paid for. But it didn't matter. It had touched a nerve, and then turns out a lot of folks around here had been pushed by their HOAs in small ways. Little humiliations, petty fees, nasty letters over nothing. And suddenly my lake became their lake. My dock became every driveway. Everyone who'd ever been told to move a trash can or repaint a mailbox felt like they were in that canoe with me. Then the second crack hit. The state attorney general's office sent an official letter to the HOA board, and to me. It said there was now an open investigation into HOA fee practices, potential misrepresentation of jurisdiction, and unlicensed collection of funds from non-members. The words were stiff and lawyerly, but buried in the legalese was the most beautiful sentence I'd ever read. Temporary cease and desist is advised for all licensing and enforcement activity by the HOA. Sandra didn't say a word publicly, but someone leaked an email from her to the board. Full meltdown. She blamed external actors, claimed the story had been misrepresented, and insisted everything had been legal to the best of her knowledge. She even accused the state of meddling in local governance. Right, like she was the mayor of the lake now. But the real moment happened at the next community meeting. I wasn't invited, obviously, but after the story blew up, they opened it to non-members for transparency. I figured what the hell. I shaved, put on a clean shirt, and walked in like I had every right to be there. Because I did. Room was packed, standing room only. Some people were angry, others just confused. A few of the older residents looked genuinely embarrassed. Kevin sat near the front, arms folded, nodding slowly when I walked in. Sandra took the podium. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, makeup thinner, smile tighter. She launched into a pre-written statement about misunderstandings, community values, and temporary suspension of the lake use program pending legal clarification. It was full of fluffy language and carefully dodged responsibility. Then someone from the back shouted, "Did you collect illegal fees or not?" And then it was like someone opened the pressure valve. People started speaking up, asking where their money went, why they hadn't been told the lake wasn't fully HOA controlled, why a non-member like me was ever approached in the first place. A man in a camo hat flat out asked if they'd be refunding his check from last summer. A woman from the East End asked why the board had been holding closed-door votes when the bylaws required member approval. Sandra tried to deflect, but it was over. Everyone knew it. You could feel it. She stepped down before the meeting was even finished, just walked out. Her second in command, some red-faced guy who used to sell insurance, I think, tried to take over, but it didn't matter. The board was cooked. Nobody trusted them. And then the best part. 2 weeks later, a follow-up notice arrived from the state. The AG's office confirmed that the HOA had no jurisdiction over lake usage by non-members and had operated beyond its legal scope in multiple instances. The HOA was ordered to issue full refunds to all non-member payers within 90 days. Any failure to comply would result in civil penalties and possible criminal investigation. Emily read it out loud on the porch like she was delivering the Declaration of Independence. Moose barked once like he approved. That same afternoon, I went down to the dock. For once, no signs. No caution tape, no drone, just water and wind and peace. And I cast my line, not because I had to prove anything anymore, but because I could, and because it was mine. Things are quieter now, not the uneasy something's coming kind of quiet, the real kind, the kind you earn, the kind that settles in your bones like warmth after a storm. The lake's back to being just a lake again, no signs, no fees, no HOA kayak patrols floating by with clipboards and walkie-talkies like they're guarding Fort Knox. Just water and ducks and wind, and me sitting out there in the early hours with Moose curled at my feet and a fresh line in the water, like the last few months didn't even happen. But they did, and I still think about it. Sometimes I catch myself watching the tree line, expecting another letter to show up taped to the gate or some bored retiree with a name tag to come lecture me about shoreline aesthetics. But nothing comes. The mailbox stays intact, the dock stays quiet. Nobody throws trash in my canoe anymore. I guess they finally figured out I wasn't going anywhere. The HOA's got new leadership now. A younger guy took over, someone with a head on his shoulders and no apparent need to micromanage his neighbors' lives. I ran into him at the gas station once. He introduced himself, thanked me for starting the conversation, and offered me a handshake like we were both grown adults who'd lived in the world. I took it. I don't hold grudges, I don't need to. He even asked if I'd be willing to talk at one of their meetings, help clarify the property lines and explain what actually happened. I said I'd think about it. Still am. Emily's back at school, but she calls more often now. Sends me articles sometimes, other folks fighting back against nonsense like this. It's kind of wild how one little lake story turned into something bigger. Apparently, some of the HOA refund money helped push a state bill forward about clearer HOA transparency laws. Nothing huge, but it's a start. I keep a folder now, tucked in the drawer under the phone charger, full of everything. Letters, printouts, maps, the whole mess, just in case anyone ever tries something again. But I don't think they will, and honestly, I'm not angry anymore. It's strange. When you're in the middle of something like that, it eats at you. The injustice, the helplessness, the way everyone looks the other way while you get picked apart, piece by piece. But then you come out the other side and you realize it wasn't about a dock or a fee or even the lake. It was about standing still when someone tries to push you. Planting your feet and saying, no. That's not easy, especially when you're alone. But I wasn't alone, not really. I had Emily, I had Moose, I had a few good neighbors and a whole lot of stubbornness, and sometimes that's enough. So now I fish, I sit, I breathe. I watch the ripples and wait for the tug. And every now and then, when the line goes tight and I feel that little thrill in my chest, I smile to myself and think, all this trouble, over a fish, and I wouldn't change a damn thing.